The top business stories live from the Sky Newsroom. Seems right, Donald Trump hints that he might drop tariffs on China to 80%. That's ahead of planned trade talks this weekend. Really good for Britain. Ministers claim the UK's trade deal with Donald Trump will save thousands of jobs. And we'll hear from LinkedIn on the AI-powered workforce of the future. Very good afternoon. On this Friday, Business Live with me, Darren McCaffrey. Donald Trump's tariffs were seen by many as the beginning of a long-term bargaining chip to form the basis of trade negotiations. Well, yesterday the UK was the first country to do a trade deal with the United States and get some tariffs reduced. Could China follow this weekend? I say that because President Trump has in the last couple of hours floated the idea of cutting tariffs on Beijing to 80%. As talks are going to get underway in Switzerland this weekend. Let's get more now with our business and economics correspondent, Paul Kelso. We are 24 hours on, aren't we, Paul, from this deal. What's your assessment of what it means for us here in the UK?
Well, we can take a look at what the British government think is in it. They say the devil is in the detail of these agreements. Well, this one's only 5 pages long, so not much detail. Let's see if we can find some devil. It starts with some pretty broad aims to grow the quality and volume of beneficial trade, to remove barriers in an enduring economic partnership. All very laudable, you might think, but let's just check this line. This document does not constitute a legally binding agreement, so it's worth the paper it's written on, but only for now. It spells out the overall aims of this deal: to reduce tariffs on a preferential basis on both sides. And we spell out the headlines we know about now. The 20% tariff that applied on beef disappears, so there's tariff-free trade, 13,000 tonnes going either way. That's about 50,000 steaks a year. Car tariffs, we know that ruinous 25% tariff has been cut to 10% on the first 10,000 vehicles. So those have been spelt out. There's some interesting language. We know steel tariffs were cut too, but some interesting language here. The UK will work promptly to meet US requirements on the security of the supply chains of steel and aluminium products intended for the United States and the nature of ownership. What does that mean? Well, it looks like it's securing UK help to try and keep out Chinese steel that undercuts US producers. Now, the government has insisted today this deal does not give America a veto on future trade agreements. There's interesting language too on pharmaceuticals. We know Donald Trump is considering tariffs on medicines. They're hugely important to the UK. It's worth £8 billion a year in exports. Now, this deal says the two sides will agree preferential treatment outcomes on pharmaceuticals and pharmaceutical ingredients. But the UK confirms it will endeavour to improve the overall environment for pharmaceutical companies operating in the UK. That sounds like code for addressing the long-standing complaint from the industry that the NHS underpays for drugs. It uses size and monopoly to drive down prices. So this might be the start of a negotiation in which the price of relief from future US tariffs could push up the NHS medicines bill, one to watch, and from pharmaceuticals to farmers, because on top of that deal on beef, we've seen there's a commitment here to work constructively to enhance agricultural market access. Well, nothing wrong with that. You'd think farmers on both sides of the Atlantic want access to these markets. In fact, the US Agricultural Secretary will be here next week to press her case, but it's always been thought too complicated and contentious because of UK food standards. They're referred to here, sanitary and phytosanitary standards. Well, those have stayed in. Now, I understand at the last minute the US tried to roll over some of these rules, but the UK refused, and the deal stresses they remain. That's considered a real coup in government because, not least, it leaves open the possibility of a broader deal with the European Union. And if we just finish up now and look at the final word here, shall we take this back to the bank yet? Not sure. The United States or the UK may terminate this arrangement by giving written notice to the other. So perhaps, given the nature of the US president, the sooner they get this signed and sealed, no matter how thin it is, the better.
Yeah, it's almost, Paul, as if Donald Trump may well change his mind at any time. Paul Kelso there, live for us. Thank you very much indeed. Well, let's get more on this from Texas now. Let's speak to Preston Cordwell. He's Chief US economist at the US financial firm Morningstar. Very good afternoon to you again, Preston. First of all, can we just start on the UK deal, if we can? One of my earlier guests described it as more of a press release than a trade deal, in the sense that trade deals normally go into hundreds, if not thousands, of pages. What's your assessment of what was agreed yesterday?
Well, look, even putting aside the fact that this deal could be ripped up tomorrow, even if it does end up being enacted, it really doesn't move the needle in terms of the U.S.'s overall trade restrictiveness yet. UK, of course, is about 3% of U.S. trade, so a fairly small share. And most importantly, the baseline 10% tariff rate is still in place. I think maybe some of the optimists would have hoped for some reduction in that baseline tariff rate, but we're not seeing that yet. And so really, insofar as we can extrapolate this to the rest of the world, right now it's not sending a signal to those hopeful that tariff rates were going to be brought down.
Is it fair to say, though, Preston, from where we are on this side of the pond, if you like, that it has got to the point where Donald Trump feels or is under pressure, let's be frank, to start doing some deals? It's been kind of notable this week that essentially it felt yesterday that he needed to get something over the line.
I think it's encouraging, that must be what markets are reacting to, just simply the desire to placate market participants who are worried about the tariffs by presenting some signs of progress. But of course, we will have to convert these to more tangible measures for the turnaround in market sentiment to be maintained. Because I think right now there's very rosy expectations implied by this rebound in U.S. equity prices that we've seen. Most of the recession risk has fallen out of the market, and that's not appropriate if we don't get a major further reduction in tariff rates.
And that includes particularly with China, and we've got these crucial talks coming up this weekend.
Well, indeed. And, obviously this morning he's bandied about this notion of bringing that tariff rate down on China from 145% to 80%, which would be a major reduction. I would just note, let's just say that this 10% baseline tariff is the new normal for the rest of the world, and we have the 80% tariff rate on China. It's still a weighted average tariff rate using 2024 import volumes of 19%. That's not even including all the product-specific tariffs, which may get exempted away. But still, that's a very high tariff rate. We, in our economic forecasts, had been projecting already a weighted average tariff rate of 18% at year-end 2025. So, and we're projecting still a major GDP growth slowdown over the next few years for the U.S. So, for us, in order to really alleviate the full recession risk, we need to see much further progress. 80% on China is just the beginning.
And on that, what is the kind of impact, or has there been an impact in the immediate terms of kind of sentiment and confidence in the United States amongst businesses and indeed consumers? Effectively, are the tariffs, beyond actual trade itself, having an impact on the domestic market in the United States?
Yeah, you've seen financial markets, again, I think a lot of the optimism had already got baked in prior to this week, just in the preceding weeks. But in terms of actual businesses and consumers, it's too soon to tell. We still don't really have data to see how this is playing out, just in reaction to the beginning of April announcements in the first place. So, that hard data will start to come out the rest of this month. We'll see how consumer spending reacts and business investment. Of course, to some degree, there's still a good deal of stockpiling right now. Prices have not risen to adjust for the higher tariffs. And so many astute consumers are going out and buying an auto right now, whereas they may have waited till later in a normal environment. So we could still see somewhat of a spike in consumer spending in April for that reason. Business investment that could apply as well, although we will see, durable goods orders will provide somewhat of a, harder leading indicator at the end of this month.
OK, Preston, as always, appreciate your insight and analysis this afternoon, live there from Texas. That is Preston Caldwell. Thank you. And just to say that we were talking there, weren't we, about the drop in tariffs. Donald Trump talking about 80% in a Truth Social post this afternoon. The FT saying that many within the administration would like to see that actually drop to 60%. And Scott Bessent, the US Treasury Secretary, who is heading to lead up those negotiations in Switzerland with China this weekend, is making it clear that this is not about trying to reach a trade deal, but rather about, as he would see it, de-escalating the trade war. So how much are the United States prepared to move? Let's speak to Ken Fisher. He's the founder and executive chairman of Fisher Investments. Ken, always a pleasure. Fascinating, isn't it, that it does seem that Donald Trump is having to roll back quite significantly when it comes to China.
So I don't really know what the president's going to do. As I've said many times before, the only thing that I know about what goes on in the man's head is that Big Macs go into it and Whoppers come out of it. The fact of the matter is he's a little bit like and you know, I'm honored you got two Plano people on in a row here, but he's a little bit like a Texas tornado of razor blades. I love you, I hate you. I love you, I hate you. Now I'm going to bait you. And it's hard to know what he's going to do. But yesterday's deal, falling on the eve of 30 days into his 90-day pause on reciprocals, is just simply not good for anybody.
Well, why do you say it's not good for anybody?
First, tariffs are always bad. Second, they're worse for the country that imposes them than the country they're imposed upon. Thirdly, the fact in this matter is, as both of your prior speakers indicated correctly, the 10% tariffs remain, which is a very high burden compared to what you would have expected at the beginning of the year. So this is not really good for Britain. Britain, let's say compared to Europe, this year in the stock market, or from the time of President Trump's election, has been doing not so well. And the fact is, the consolation prize there is that America is doing even worse. Fact is, said simply, Ben Graham famously said long before I was born that in the short term, the stock market's a voting machine, in the long term, it's a weighing machine, meaning popularity in the short term, actual accuracy of what's happening with the economy in the longer term. But by now, market's pretty clear. U.S. stock market is lagging almost everything in the world this year. Europe and the core, MSCI Europe, for example, is all-time highs today. The market outside of America is doing fine. It's America that's suffering. And then Britain in this deal is just not getting the best of what you'd hope for, which is to make those 10% tariffs go away. On the good side, if I can just make two more points quickly before blathering too much. A, as Mr. Kelso said, that agreement isn't worth the paper it's written on, because it doesn't really bind to much of anything. It's not legally binding now, and either side can back out. And there's a lot of devil in the details that have not yet been determined. It's really kind of a letter of principle. Secondarily, on the good news, all the fear about this stuff is worse than the reality can ever be, because in the United States of America, the other great United, there is not the capability in the system that the government has to collect tariffs, to collect all of these tariffs. The infrastructure for it by the Customs Border Protection subset of Homeland Security does not have the capacity to process these.
Yeah, I mean, that is a really interesting point, isn't it? That the infrastructure might simply not be there. But let's look at this. You're in Chicago, I'm in London. Give me an insight into... No, but I mean, well, you are. But I mean,
I'm in Plano, Texas.
Oh, you are? Sorry, we've got you labelled wrong. Just talk to me about what is happening with the Trump administration, in the sense that they've talked a lot about countries coming forward and calling them up, looking for deals. But all we've had so far is the UK deal. What I'm trying to get at here, Donald Trump, and I think it's clear with what's going to happen in China, with the China negotiations this weekend, is under pressure to rein tariffs in a bit. Is that fair? Is that a fair assessment?
The word that's used inside Washington, D.C. is to find ways to off-ramp while saving face. The fact of what he needs to accomplish. He set out a 90-day goal that he didn't even think he was going to be doing 36 hours before he did it. And in his future movements, we're 1/3 of the way through that. He's got to rack up symbolic victories, even if they've got no teeth in them. Then he can claim he accomplished what he wanted and he can move on. If he does not do that, and let me be very simple about this, if he does not do that successfully, save face, but off-ramp, reduce the tariffs, hopefully come back to Britain and drop below the 10% level quite a bit. If he does not do that, the Republicans are going to get killed in the midterms, and the Republicans know that. And so Congress will be increasingly putting pressure on him behind the scenes. Get it done, Mr. President. Get it done, Mr. President. Get it done, Mr. President. But his economic advisors do not understand the havoc that they have caused as what I refer to as the Texas tornado of razor blades.
And just, Ken, before we let you go, talk to me about tax, because Donald Trump seems to be sending out mixed messages, but we're kind of getting the hints that he wouldn't mind taxes increasing for the wealthiest in America to help pay for a round of other tax cuts.
First, I'm supposed to be the 84th richest person in America, and I'm just going to tell you he's not going to do that.
Why?
Why? Because he can't get the votes in Congress to do it. This is something that has to go through the House of Representatives, signed by the Senate, and there are individuals who are in favor of that, but you can't begin to get through the razor-thin margin that the Republicans have in the House of Representatives, and with the 54 seats that the Republicans have in the Senate, to get that bill through. He's got a complicated, big bill he's got to get through, and he's got to move it like some big ocean liner straight down the middle without a lot of wiggles in it to get it over the borderline. And if he doesn't, then he's got problems with that come the midterms.
OK. Ken, it's fascinating stuff. And as always, we really appreciate your time here on Sky News this afternoon. That's Ken Fisher there. Thank you indeed. Have a nice weekend. OK, you're watching Business Live here on Sky News. Something different coming up after the break. Why Cambridge is the artificial intelligence hotspot of the UK, but it's left much of the rest of the country falling behind. We'll be explaining that after this break.
Jubilation in the streets, while some emotional.
This is a political victory for Prime Minister Modi and his Hindu Nationalist Party.
I'm Neville Lazarus, and I'm Sky's reporter based in Delhi.
Companies like these are helping India in its trajectory to be a serious player in space exploration. Sky News, get the full story first.
A show of military might and menace. Why should the West trust you?
Frankly, I don't care whether the West trusts us or not.
Sky News. Get the full story first.
Have a quick word for Sky News. Is the West right? Are you fueling Russia's war machine? American journalist Evan Gershkovich is on trial here, but was first on display.
I'm Ivor Bennett, Sky's Moscow correspondent.
We arrive. A secret hospital hidden in the Myanmar jungle, treating the victims of this bloody war. This is Myanmar today. Its military rulers don't want the world to see, but we have.
I fight for my own future. I fight for my generation's future.
This is an actual crime.
They don't care for that.
Myanmar army is only a couple of kilometers away.
So this is a major humanitarian disaster.
You want to talk business? Meet me in the On-Board Lounge. Fly Emirates, fly better.
Very welcome back. Now, the government wants the UK to be a global leader when it comes to artificial intelligence. And new research by LinkedIn suggests that there are hotspots of AI talent in the UK, with Cambridge apparently leading the way. But it also found the picture was less positive elsewhere in the country. Well, I've been speaking to Sue Duke. She is VP for Global Public Policy at LinkedIn.
What's really positive for the UK is exactly to see those AI talent hotspots coming through. So as the government seeks to become a leader, to position the UK as a leader in AI globally, seeing the likes of Cambridge, which is coming out as number 4 when it comes to the share of AI talent globally, that's extremely positive news, and that's exactly what we need to see. But you're absolutely right. Beyond those AI talent hotspots, the Cambridge, Bristol, Edinburgh, Londons of the UK, we also need to see this talent, this AI skilling spread much more broadly across the country. We know that this technology is going to be at the heart of the transformation of the economy that's going to happen over the next number of years. And that means that we need a broad diffusion of these AI skills. We need those AI technical skills. We need those AI literacy skills. And then we also need to ensure that workers have those unique, irreplaceable human skills. All 3 of these categories of skills we know are going to be what make workers successful in this transition and are what are going to set up UK businesses to take advantage of this technology.
But is AI, the UK, sorry, I should say, so really at the forefront of all of this in the sense that, you know, relative compared to other markets, we're not terribly big. And AI is not just about the talent of people. And I get, you know, obviously that's where LinkedIn is focused on, but it's on bigger issues like, for example, the size of data centres, the cost of electricity. I mean, can the UK really be a powerhouse?
That ambition that the government has set out to be a leader and the plans they've put in place, which looks at how do we set up these AI growth zones, that's exactly the kind of ambition, that's exactly the kind of strategy that's going to put the UK in a spot where it can be a leader in this space. And what the government recognises in its AI opportunities plan is precisely just how important it is to have skills and people at the centre of that strategy. And so seeing some of these AI hotspots that are not just really impressive across the UK, but they're really impressive globally when it comes to the share of AI talent that are sitting in those hotspots. That's exactly the foundation stone that the UK needs to build on if it's going to emerge as one of these leaders.
But Sue, isn't the problem here that the whole point of AI is that it is going to take people's jobs away? I mean, Duolingo, I think, announced this week that they are getting rid of actual people and replacing them with artificial intelligence. I mean, is that good for the UK? It may be inevitable, but it also can't be good, surely, for LinkedIn. There is a platform that's all about trying to get people into jobs, that these jobs genuinely are about to disappear, or are they about to disappear?
For the vast majority of workers, AI is going to transform their roles. We see that very clearly as we see the pace of change, how this technology is driving skills change picking up. And by 2030, we expect that 70% of skills for the average job will have changed. And that's precisely why we see our members and businesses across the UK coming to LinkedIn to figure out, how do I navigate this transition and to access the resources that are going to set them up to be successful in this transition.
There you go. That was Sue Duke from LinkedIn speaking to me a little earlier. OK, well, that is it from me on Business Live for the moment. Of course, we're back on Monday morning at 11:30. We'll be covering those talks on Sky News over the weekends between the US and China in Switzerland to see if there is a de-escalation in the trade war, something Donald Trump has made it clear today he wants to see. But are China willing to play ball? So do watch out for coverage of that over the weekend. Up next, it is Jonathan Samuels with the News Hour, including that top story of the sycamore tree verdict from Newcastle Crown Court today. But from me, for now, goodbye. I'll see you on Monday. Have a great weekend. Bye-bye.
We've got your Sunday mornings covered. From the front page and the sounds of the streets to the voices of the people who make the major calls and big picture politics beyond Westminster. We'll put you at the heart of our story.
I'm ready. Are you?
Join me, Trevor Phillips, Sunday mornings on Sky News.